There comes a moment after a spiritual awakening when you don't feel powerful, you feel empty. It's confusing. You expected enlightenment to feel like bliss, motivation, and purpose. But instead, you're staring at silence. You're wondering, why do I feel nothing? Why do I feel like I'm floating without direction? This isn't a mistake. It's not a punishment. It's the universe removing your old fuel, the ego-driven motivation, the external chasing, the identity that needed validation. You're not lost. You're in the quantum void, the space, where the old dissolves and the new hasn't fully formed. And in this video, you'll understand why the universe makes you feel empty after awakening, and why that emptiness is actually the beginning of your real power. The empty feeling is not failure, it's reset. The emptiness you feel after a spiritual awakening is not a sign of failure, it's a signal of reset. The universe isn't punishing you, it's clearing the slate. The old motivations, attachments, and desires that once pushed you forward no longer align with your evolving consciousness. That space where you once felt drive and direction, it's being emptied for something new. When life feels hollow after awakening, it's because the energy that once fueled you egoic chasing, proving yourself, needing validation has been stripped away. This creates an internal pause. The universe knows you can't build a new foundation on the same old structure. So first, it removes what no longer fits, even if that feels like nothingness. Emptiness is uncomfortable because the mind wants answers immediately. It wants to fill the void with action plans, goals, or something to fix. But the soul operates differently. It understands that before creation comes silence. Before the next chapter starts, the page must be cleared. This isn't failure, it's energetic preparation. Most people confuse this stage with regression. They think, I've lost my passion, I've lost my purpose. But what's really happening is a shift from surface-level passion to soul-aligned purpose. The old version of you can't survive this new vibration, and that feels like loss, but it's actually alignment. The universe doesn't leave you empty out of cruelty. It does so to create spaciousness. If you still carried the weight of past desires, there would be no room for higher guidance to enter. Emptiness creates the openness required for deeper knowing. It's not a void of meaning, it's the beginning of a new frequency. This reset is a nervous system recalibration. The mind, used to chasing and forcing, goes into withdrawal when the hustle stops. But the deeper you, the part that's connected to universal wisdom, it's finally getting a chance to breathe. The stillness you're experiencing is the doorway to a more coherent existence. In the emptiness, you begin to realize how much of your past life was driven by fear and scarcity. You did things to avoid failure, to be seen, or to gain approval. Awakening dissolves those motivations, leaving behind silence. That silence can feel like nothingness, but it's actually peace waiting to be claimed. The emptiness after awakening is often mistaken for depression, but it's not clinical, it's spiritual. It's the shedding of identities and roles you no longer need. You're not lazy or lost. You're shedding layers of ego that no longer serve your higher path. This process feels hollow because the old framework has collapsed. This reset stage teaches you to stop seeking outside and start listening within. The universe is guiding you toward internal stability, not external validation. When you stop filling the void with distractions, you begin to hear the subtle voice of your higher self. That voice is quiet at first, but it grows louder with practice. The ego fears the void because it can't control it. The ego wants productivity, certainty, and visible progress. But spiritual growth often requires you to sit in discomfort, trusting that something is happening beneath the surface. The emptiness isn't absence, it's transformation happening invisibly. Stillness feels foreign in a world obsessed with action. But the universe works differently. It calibrates you in silence. It rebuilds you in the quiet moments when nothing seems to be happening. The emptiness you feel is not stagnation. It's the pause before quantum alignment. Your soul understands that life is cyclical. After every expansion comes integration. After every breakthrough comes stillness. The emptiness you're feeling is the space between old momentum and new creation. It's the reset button that prepares you for the next level of your existence. In this space, patience becomes a spiritual practice. You're learning to exist without forcing outcomes. You're learning to trust the unfolding. When you stop rushing to escape the emptiness, you realize it holds the seeds of your next reality. You're not stuck, you're being recalibrated. The reset phase teaches you how to exist without external scaffolding. Who are you when you're not achieving, chasing, or fixing? This question feels heavy at first, but it's liberating. You realize that your worth is not tied to action, it's tied to being. And from this place of being, true creation begins. The emptiness after awakening is not a failure, it's a sacred reset. It's the universe saying, you're ready for a new way of living. But first, we must clear the old codes. Trust the process. Trust the void. Because what feels like nothing is actually the preparation for everything. Loss of identity is part of the shift. One of the most disorienting parts of spiritual awakening is the loss of identity. You no longer resonate with who you used to be, but you're not yet fully clear on who you're becoming. This in-between space feels like drifting. The roles, labels, and definitions that once anchored you begin to dissolve. Your previous identity was often built for survival. It was shaped by family, culture, and social expectations. You became who you needed to be to fit in or succeed. But awakening dismantles that structure. The version of you that was built on fear, comparison, or ego cannot survive in the new frequency. Losing your identity feels like losing yourself, but it's actually shedding what wasn't truly you. The universe strips away the masks you wore to be accepted. It pulls down the walls you built for safety. What remains is raw, unfiltered awareness, waiting to become something more aligned. This process can feel like death because, in a way, it is. It's the death of the false self, the persona you performed to feel secure in the world. The mind panics during this phase because it fears annihilation. But the soul knows this is not the end, it's the beginning of authentic selfhood. When your old identity collapses, you may feel like you've lost your purpose. The goals and dreams you once chased no longer excite you. This isn't laziness, it's a recalibration. Your system is being rewired to seek alignment over achievement, authenticity over approval. Relationships often shift during this identity loss. People who resonated with your old self may drift away. This is painful but necessary. The universe removes connections that match your outdated frequency so you can make space for new, aligned relationships that support your evolution. The loss of identity also means letting go of narratives. You may have thought of yourself as the strong one, the fixer, or the achiever, but those stories no longer fit. Without them, you may feel lost at first. Yet this blank slate is the fertile ground where your true self can emerge. This phase requires radical trust. The mind will try to rebuild the old identity because it craves familiarity. But the soul asks you to resist that urge. It invites you to stay present in the unknown, allowing the new self to reveal itself organically, not through force. During this shift, you may experience confusion about your values. What once felt important status, success, external validation, may suddenly feel empty. This is not failure. It's a sign that you're moving from external orientation to internal alignment, where worth is no longer measured by the world's standards. Creative voids are common in this phase. You may feel uninspired or detached from your usual passions. This isn't because you've lost your creativity, it's because you're being asked to create from a different place. The old creative energy was tied to ego. The new one will come from soul embodiment. Physical symptoms can also arise. Identity is stored not just in the mind, but in the body. As you shed old versions of yourself, you might feel fatigue, restlessness, or emotional waves. This is your nervous system adjusting to a new baseline. It's a detox of outdated energetic imprints. Spiritual practices become essential during this transition. Meditation, breathwork, and journaling help you stay grounded as your inner landscape shifts. These tools remind you that the observer, the awareness behind the identity remains constant, even as the self-concept dissolves. The loss of identity is not about becoming no one. It's about becoming who you really are beneath the layers. It's about accessing the authentic self that exists beyond conditioning. This self doesn't need to perform or prove. It exists naturally, effortlessly, in alignment with the universe. Over time, a new identity forms, but it's softer and more fluid. You no longer cling to rigid roles. You understand that who you are is a living, breathing process, not a fixed label. This flexible identity allows you to adapt, evolve, and remain aligned with your highest truth. Ultimately, losing your old identity is not a crisis, it's a sacred invitation. It's the universe calling you to remember the version of you that existed before the world told you who to be. In this remembering, you unlock your true power not as a persona, but as presence. You're in the void, the space between realities. The void is the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's a strange, weightless place where the old life has dissolved, but the new life hasn't yet arrived. You're no longer anchored to familiar patterns, but you haven't fully stepped into your next version. This in-between state feels unsettling, but it's part of spiritual transformation. Being in the void isn't a mistake, it's a necessary transition. The universe pauses you here to prevent you from rushing back into old habits. It forces you to sit in uncertainty long enough to break free from your previous identity. In this stillness, you begin to prepare for what's next, even if you can't see it yet. The void is not empty, it's fertile. It may feel like nothing is happening, but energetically, everything is happening. Your soul is recalibrating. Your nervous system is adjusting to new frequencies. On the surface, life seems still, but beneath the surface, you are shifting on a quantum level. Most people fear the void because it lacks clarity. The ego panics when it can't predict the next step. But the void isn't here to provide answers. It's here to teach you how to trust. This is where you learn to surrender control, allowing a higher wisdom to guide your next chapter. In the void, time feels different. Days may blur together, motivation may fade. You're no longer moving on the same timeline as before. This isn't depression, it's energetic suspension. You're being asked to stop chasing and start aligning, to rest while your next reality assembles itself in the unseen. The void strips away distractions. Your usual coping mechanisms, overworking, overthinking, seeking validation, no longer work. This forces you to confront the silence. It's in this silence that your real desires begin to surface, free from the noise of ego and external influence. Dreams may feel distant in the void. The things you once wanted don't hold the same charge. This can feel like losing your purpose, but it's actually clearing space for a new, more authentic purpose to emerge. You're being rewired to desire from soul, not from survival patterns. Relationships shift in the void. Some connections fall away because they were built on your old vibration. You may feel isolated, but this solitude is sacred. It gives you the space to find out who you are without the projections or expectations of others shaping your path. The void is a place of reflection. Here, you get to see your life without distraction. You notice the patterns you repeated, the cycles you stayed trapped in, and the attachments you carried. This awareness isn't comfortable, but it's what allows real transformation to begin. In the void, you learn the difference between doing and being. You realize you don't have to constantly act to have worth. Simply existing, breathing, and witnessing your own becoming is enough. This is where you begin to shift from external striving to internal alignment. Spiritual texts call this phase the dark night of the soul, but it's more accurate to call it the silent dawn. It's the moment before the new light rises, when everything is still. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. The void teaches you patience, humility, and trust in the unseen. The void also teaches you to stop resisting. The more you fight it, the longer you stay stuck. But when you relax into the emptiness, you create space for universal guidance to flow in. This surrender is not giving up, it's tuning into a deeper intelligence that knows the way forward. In this space, you become aware of your energetic blueprint. You sense the parts of yourself that are no longer in resonance with where you're going. The void exposes these outdated patterns so you can release them. This shedding is painful, but it's part of the process. The void prepares you for quantum leaps. When you finally exit this phase, you'll realize that the growth you experienced in stillness was more profound than anything you could have forced through action. You were not stagnant, you were incubating a new reality. Ultimately, the void is not a punishment, it's a portal. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. The universe places you here not to break you, but to rebuild you. And when you emerge, you'll carry a deeper wisdom, a clearer path, and a stronger sense of self than ever before. The mind can't understand the soul's expansion. The mind is designed to understand patterns, logic, and structure. It thrives on certainty and predictability. But the soul operates beyond these boundaries. When your soul expands, it moves into realms the mind can't comprehend. This is why spiritual growth often feels confusing to the thinking mind. The mind wants explanations. It asks, why do I feel this way? What's happening? How do I fix it? But soul expansion isn't something to be fixed, it's something to be experienced. It unfolds in layers that cannot be mapped by rational thought. The mind struggles because it's trying to control what can only be surrendered to. When the soul begins to expand, the mind often interprets this as chaos. You might feel disoriented, anxious, or detached from reality. But this isn't dysfunction, it's the natural response of a mind trying to grasp the ungraspable. Your consciousness is stretching beyond its old limits, and the mind is trying to catch up. Thought loops become louder during spiritual growth because the mind is searching for control. It wants to label, categorize, and define what's happening. But the expansion of the soul doesn't fit into mental boxes. It moves through energy, frequency, and intuition languages the logical mind doesn't fluently speak. This is why many people feel stuck or lost after awakening. The mind says, something is wrong. I don't know where I'm going. But the soul knows exactly where it's going. It just doesn't explain the path in linear terms. The journey is vibrational, not verbal. The instructions come through feeling, not thought. Learning to coexist with this gap is part of spiritual maturity. You don't silence the mind, you teach it to soften. You allow it to observe without needing to dominate. This balance creates room for the soul's wisdom to rise without being filtered through fear or over-analysis. Meditation helps create this space. When you meditate, you move from thinking to witnessing. You start to sense the subtle movements of your soul, the quiet nudges, the energetic shifts, the pull toward alignment. These sensations often come without words, but their truth is undeniable. The mind will always try to seek meaning, but some experiences are meant to be felt, not figured out. Expansion feels like unfamiliar territory, because it is. You're stepping into a version of yourself that doesn't operate by the mind's old rules. This is growth beyond cognition, it's evolution. Trying to force the mind to understand the soul's expansion creates suffering. You loop in confusion, frustration, or self-doubt, but when you let go of the need to explain everything, you create peace. You allow yourself to simply exist in the mystery, trusting that clarity will come in its own time. The soul's growth often involves paradoxes the mind can't resolve. You feel emptier and fuller at the same time. You feel lost and yet more found. These contradictions are not mistakes. They're signs that you're moving beyond duality into a more integrated state of being. The mind is built for the known, but the soul thrives in the unknown. Expansion feels like stepping into darkness at first, because the mind can't see the whole path. But the soul doesn't need to see. It feels its way forward through intuition and resonance. This is how new realities are birthed. When you allow the mind to relax, you notice that life begins to guide you differently. Synchronicities appear. Insights drop in without effort. You begin to live in harmony with a deeper intelligence. The mind serves as a tool, but it no longer runs the show. This is the shift into soul-led living. Over time, the mind learns to trust the soul. It realizes that not knowing is not a problem, it's part of the process. The mind becomes less rigid, more curious, and more open to receiving wisdom in forms it previously rejected. This surrender creates inner peace. Soul expansion is not about abandoning the mind, it's about expanding beyond its limitations. You integrate the mind into a larger awareness. where it serves as a helper, not a master. This allows you to move through life with clarity, but also with openness to the unknown. In the end, the mind cannot fully understand the soul's expansion because the soul is limitless and the mind is finite. But that's okay. The goal isn't to figure it all out. The goal is to experience it, to live it, to trust the unfolding. And in doing so, you allow the mind and soul to finally work together, rather than against each other. Nothingness is where the next self is built. Nothingness is not the absence of life, it's the foundation of transformation. When everything familiar falls away, you're left in a space that feels empty. But that emptiness is fertile ground. It's the place where your next self is quietly being constructed, piece by piece, beyond your conscious awareness. Most people fear nothingness because it strips away their sense of identity. Without roles, labels, or external goals, the ego feels lost. But this is where real growth happens. When there's nothing left to cling to, you're forced to rebuild from truth, not from societal conditioning or past programming. In the space of nothingness, old desires dissolve. The things you used to chase no longer hold the same meaning. This isn't a loss, it's a clearing. The universe is removing distractions, so you can build a life rooted in authenticity, not in the pursuit of things that never fulfilled you. Creation always starts in the void. Think of a blank canvas before a painting, or silence before a song. Your next self requires the same space, empty of past noise, open to new possibilities. The stillness between identities is not wasted time. It's a spiritual incubation period. When you're in nothingness, there's a temptation to rush, to find something to do, to label yourself again, to make the discomfort go away. But if you act too soon, you rebuild the same life you just outgrew. True transformation requires patience. Let the next self emerge without forcing it. Nothingness teaches you to sit with discomfort, to watch your thoughts without reacting, to feel your emotions without labeling them as problems. This stillness rewires your nervous system. It trains you to hold space for the unknown, which is where all new creation begins. In this space, you're not required to know who you are. You're required to allow who you are to unfold. The next version of you is not something you invent with your mind. It's something that reveals itself when you stop trying to control the process and start trusting the emergence. The paradox of nothingness is that it feels like emptiness, but is actually full of potential. All possibilities exist in this state. You are at a crossroads where infinite paths are available. The version of you that steps forward will be the one aligned with the vibration you choose now. Solitude often accompanies this phase. Friends may drift, passions may fade, and routines may break down. But this isolation isn't punishment, it's preparation. You're being pulled away from external distractions so you can focus on inner construction. You're not alone, you're in alignment with transformation. Nothingness dissolves the need for comparison. When you're in the void, you're no longer competing with others or chasing timelines. You're simply existing, allowing life to reset you on a cellular level. This surrender removes pressure and opens the door to deeper self-connection. The next self you're building isn't a version based on hustle or achievement, it's a version rooted in peace, alignment, and integrity. It's not about what you can produce for the world. It's about who you become when no one is watching. This is selfhood built on soul, not ego. When you look back on this period, you'll realize it wasn't wasted time, it was sacred time. The stillness, the silence, the uncertainty, they were all part of the construction process. The foundation you lay in nothingness will support the next phase of your life in ways you can't yet imagine. Letting go of the need to define yourself right now is an act of courage. The next self is not built by clinging to the old or rushing into the new. It's built by staying present in the gap, trusting that your higher self is orchestrating something beyond your current awareness. Nothingness also teaches you humility. It shows you that life is not always about doing or achieving, it's about being. From this state of being, you'll emerge with a clearer sense of purpose, but it won't be forced or artificial. It will be an authentic reflection of your true essence. Ultimately, nothingness is not an end, it's a beginning. It's the sacred pause before the next expression of your life unfolds. When you honor this space, you allow the next self to build itself naturally, aligned with the frequency of who you truly are becoming. This is not depression, it's energetic realignment. What you're experiencing is not ordinary depression, it's a deep, energetic realignment. On the surface, it may feel like sadness, emptiness, or a loss of motivation. But underneath, your system is recalibrating. The universe is shifting your internal compass, not punishing you, but preparing you for something new. Depression often stems from hopelessness or unresolved trauma. But this phase is different. It's not about despair, it's about detachment from what no longer serves you. Your mind might label this as depression because it's unfamiliar, but energetically, it's a shedding process. During awakening, your vibration rises. Old thought patterns, emotional cycles, and habits that once felt normal start to collapse. This collapse feels like a breakdown, but it's actually a breakthrough. Your body, mind, and spirit are adjusting to a new energetic baseline. In this space, you may feel like nothing excites you anymore. Goals that used to drive you fall flat. This isn't a loss of passion. It's the release of false passion. The universe is emptying you of ego-driven desires, so you can align with soul-driven purpose. Energetic realignment removes the distractions you used to rely on. You might find yourself withdrawing from social media, relationships, or constant busyness. This withdrawal isn't depression, it's a return to stillness. You're learning to hear the subtle guidance of your higher self. Your nervous system is also involved in this realignment. When you move from hustle to harmony, your body needs time to adjust. Fatigue, heaviness, or disconnection aren't failures. They're symptoms of recalibration. You're shifting from survival mode to soul mode. The emptiness you feel is not a void of meaning. It's a pause between identities. Your old self is dissolving, but your new self hasn't fully formed. This liminal space is uncomfortable, but necessary. It's where transformation happens at the deepest level. Spiritual traditions call this the dark night of the soul, but in reality, it's the dawn of consciousness. The darkness is not there to destroy you, it's there to reset you. In the absence of external stimulation, you finally meet your true self. Energetic realignment dismantles your attachment to outcomes. You're being trained to value presence over progress, being overdoing. This shift feels like disorientation at first, but it's clearing the path for more authentic creation. The mind resists this phase because it can't label it easily. Depression is a diagnosis the mind understands, but awakening is not. When you stop trying to intellectualize the process, you allow the energy to move through you without added mental suffering. In realignment, you'll likely feel waves of emotion. One moment you're calm, the next you're anxious. One day you're hopeful, the next you're numb. This fluctuation is not failure, it's part of the rewiring. Your system is learning a new rhythm. Isolation becomes common during energetic shifts. You may feel disconnected from friends or family who don't understand what you're going through. But this solitude is sacred. It gives you space to recalibrate without the noise of external expectations. Sleep patterns often change during this process. Some nights you'll sleep deeply, others you'll be restless. This is because your subconscious is processing and releasing layers of energy stored from past experiences. The body is healing in ways the mind can't comprehend. Appetite may shift too. You might eat less, crave different foods, or feel detached from your usual cravings. This is not a sign of illness. It's your body moving away from old coping mechanisms. You're learning to nourish yourself differently, in alignment with your new state. Creativity may pause during this time. The ideas you once had may not flow like before. But this is not creative death, it's creative dormancy. Like winter before spring, your creative energy is incubating, preparing for new, more aligned expression. Energetic realignment requires patience. The mind wants quick results, but the soul knows this process unfolds in divine timing. Trying to rush it will only create more resistance. Acceptance softens the experience and allows the shift to happen with less friction. This phase teaches you to trust your inner guidance over external validation. You're learning to follow subtle cues instead of loud opinions. This internal compass is more accurate than any advice the outside world can offer. But it takes time to rebuild that trust. As you move through realignment, old emotional wounds may resurface. This is not regression, it's release. The universe is giving you a chance to clear trapped energy from your system so you can move forward lighter, freer, and more whole. Eventually, the heaviness begins to lift not because you pushed through, but because you allowed the process to unfold. You emerge clearer, calmer, and more connected to your purpose. What once felt like depression becomes the foundation of your rebirth. In the end, this is not about fixing yourself, it's about becoming yourself. Energetic realignment strips away the layers that don't belong to you. What remains is not broken, it's true. And from that truth, your next chapter begins. The universe removes noise so you can hear your real calling. The universe has a way of silencing the external world when it's time for you to listen inward. It starts by removing the distractions, the constant busyness, the endless chasing, the noise that drowns out your true calling. At first, this feels like loss, but in reality, it's an invitation to deeper clarity. When you're surrounded by noise, it's easy to confuse activity with purpose. You fill your days with tasks, commitments, and goals, thinking you're on the right path. But sometimes, the universe interrupts this cycle. It pulls you out of the noise so you can hear the quiet whisper of your real direction. This removal of noise can look like life falling apart. Relationships shift, careers stall, and routines break down. It's not because you're failing, it's because you're being redirected. The distractions that once kept you busy are no longer aligned with your higher path. Stillness becomes the teacher during this phase. Without the usual distractions, you're left with yourself. This can feel uncomfortable at first, but it's the only way to hear what's beneath the surface. Your real calling doesn't scream, it whispers, and silence is the space where you finally hear it. Often, the universe removes the very things you thought you needed. The people, places, or roles that defined you may dissolve. This creates emptiness, but it also creates space. In that space, you begin to realize you've been building a life around expectations instead of alignment. The mind resists this silence because it's addicted to stimulation. It wants answers, distractions, and certainty. But your soul knows that clarity comes in the quiet. The universe isn't punishing you by removing the noise, it's guiding you toward truth that can't be found in chaos. During this process, you may feel detached from your usual ambitions. Goals that once seemed urgent now feel irrelevant. This isn't laziness, it's realignment. You're learning to differentiate between what you thought you wanted and what your soul actually came here to do. The universe removes noise not to isolate you, but to reconnect you with yourself. In the absence of constant input, you begin to hear your own intuition again. This inner voice has been waiting patiently beneath the clutter of daily life, ready to guide you forward. This phase often comes after a period of burnout. When you've pushed too hard for too long, the universe steps in and forces a pause. That pause isn't failure, it's a recalibration. It's a moment for you to step back and reassess what really matters. Many people mistake this silence for stagnation. But the truth is, stillness is not the absence of movement, it's the foundation of meaningful action. When you slow down, you begin to move from alignment, not from urgency. This changes everything. In the absence of noise, your nervous system relaxes. You stop running on adrenaline and start tuning into a deeper rhythm. This calm state allows you to perceive subtle guidance that you were too busy to notice before. The universe communicates in energy, not volume. Letting go of noise is also about releasing societal expectations. You no longer live for approval or validation. You start living for resonance, choosing what feels aligned over what looks impressive. This shift requires courage, but it leads to authentic fulfillment. When you stop chasing distractions, you start noticing synchronicities. These signs were always there, but now you're present enough to see them. Life begins to feel more guided, more intentional, because you're finally attuned to the frequency of your true path. The universe removes the noise of comparison. You stop looking sideways at what others are doing and focus on your own journey. This focus is not selfish. It's necessary. Your calling is unique to you, and only in silence can you hear what it's asking of you. In this quiet space, you'll rediscover passions you forgot about. You'll remember the things that once lit you up before the world told you to be realistic. These buried desires resurface not as fantasy, but as soul reminders of who you truly are. The noise of overthinking also fades during this process. Your mind stops spinning in loops, trying to control every outcome. You begin to trust that not knowing is part of the path. In this surrender, wisdom arises from a place beyond logic. The universe removes relationships that no longer serve your growth. This can feel like loneliness, but it's actually liberation. You're no longer entangled in energy that drains you. Instead, you're making room for connections that align with your evolving vibration. When the external world goes quiet, your internal world becomes louder. Emotions surface. Old wounds come into view. This isn't regression, it's revelation. The universe is showing you what needs to be healed so you can carry less baggage into your next chapter. Eventually, the silence becomes sacred. What once felt like emptiness becomes peace. You realize that your real calling was never outside of you, was always within. The noise just made you forget. Now, you're finally tuned in. In the end, the universe doesn't remove noise to punish you, removes it to align you. It strips away the distractions so you can hear your higher self clearly. And from that clarity, you build a life that's not just busy, but meaningful. Not just loud, but true. If you're feeling empty after your spiritual awakening, understand this. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt. The universe strips away your old motivations, your chasing, your need for external validation not to punish you, but to prepare you. This is the silent calibration, where your energy aligns with something deeper than hustle or desire. It aligns with being. The quantum shift is not about doing morettes, about becoming less attached to doing it all. And from that stillness, real magnetism begins. Your next level of life won't come from foresight, will come from coherence, from knowing who you are, without needing to prove it. So if this message resonated, let it settle into your system. Rewatch it, reflect on it, and when you're ready, comment below. I allow the void. I trust the realignment. Because the universe is listening, and the next version of you is already on the way quietly, naturally, and without the weight of forcing.